In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up interior lighting in Corona Renderer. I'm going to show a few ways, but first, let's place some cameras. Right now, I'm working in the Corona Renderer. To place a camera here, we click on the camera icon and select Corona Cam and draw a camera. With the right button, I'm going to exit the camera creation mode. Next, I'm going to split my viewport into two parts via the Alt+W keys. The viewport configuration can be changed like this. I press plus, configure viewports, layout, and here you can select the viewport split configuration.
My name is Nikita. On this channel, you'll find a lot of useful lessons on the topic of architectural visualization. Subscribe to don't miss new useful videos.
Okay, to go to our new camera, we need to find out what it's called. Corona Cam 001, and we go to it. In the second viewport, press the C key and let's move the camera view in the left viewport as we need it. I need to move both the camera and its targeting. It will be easier to do this from the top view. Let's also change the vertical position of the camera and the target. Let's move the camera back a little bit. Go to the camera and go to its settings. We need to change the width of the camera lens. I usually use focal length in millimeters. Let's set it to about 30. Next, we need a camera clipping setting. Here we need to click Enable. Next, check the box. And in the Near column, we can change the value of camera clipping. In the next column, we can change the range of drawing of our camera. We will also need the Tilt and Shift column. Let's set the automatic vertical tilt setting. Okay, let's use the camera clipping setting. We're going to move the front plane a little bit, and that way we can place the camera a little bit behind the room. In the same way, I'm going to expose some more cameras. So I've set up camera 1, then camera 2 and camera 3. To change the aspect ratio of the frame, we go to Settings, click on Common, click on this lock icon and change the aspect ratio here. To easily manage my cameras, I use the Smart Camera View plugin. Here are my 3 cameras. With the right mouse button, I can switch between them, and also I can flexibly change the different settings of each camera separately. I talk more about this plugin in my video on 3ds Max plugins and scripts. Now let's set up the fill light for our scene. To do this, I go to Settings, Scene tab, select Single Map. In the Scene Environment tab, click on an empty slot, find Corona, and select Corona Sky. Then open the Materials and drag and drop Corona Sky into any empty slot in Instance mode. But before we run the renderer, we need to set up a few things. Go to the Render Settings, go to the Scene tab, put in the MTL Override checkbox. Here we customize a simple Corona white material. I click on the None slot, select Corona Physical MTL, and now during the render, all our objects will have white Corona material. If you have glass on your windows, you can add them to the exception by clicking on Preserve and adding Preserve Glass Materials. And now let's run an interactive render and look at the result. I open up the Corona Frame Buffer, run the interactive render, and you can see how we've got fill light in the scene. If you want to make the tone of this fill light more neutral, we can apply a color correction node to Corona Sky in the Material Editor. To do that, I click on Corona Sky, go to General, and choose Color Correction. OK. And here I'm reducing saturation and restart the interactive render. And you can see the result. Also, by going to the Corona Sky tab, we can change the intensity of this map. I don't recommend increasing the intensity too much. This is what Corona Sky looks like behind the interior. If you want to blur the horizon, use the fake horizon blue feature. Increase this number and our horizon is blurred and you won't see that line in your interior window. Let's open the tone mapping tab and work a little bit with the exposure and other settings of our picture. Let's raise the exposure a little bit. If you want, you can change the color balance of the picture. Also, by clicking on the plus sign, you can add other parameters as well. For example, let's add the filmic mapping parameter. Here we can clean up the highlights a bit and work with the shadows. This setting makes the shadows deeper. There is also a setting called tone curve. Here we can adjust our shadows more flexibly, and we can make our interior look more airy. I also like the vignette. If you want, you can add curves. That can also be extremely useful. Okay, let's move into our camera 2. I'm going to run the interactive render again, and here I realized that I'd like to tweak the tone mapping for my second camera separately, independent of the other cameras. To do this, I select camera 2, go to settings, and find the tone mapping tab. This is where the override checkbox needs to be checked. From this point, separately, for the second camera, we have an independent tone mapping. And we can change all these parameters independently of the other cameras. That's very useful. Let's do the same thing for camera 3. Let's go to camera 3, select it, and let's look at the result on the interactive render. Here, I'm also turning on the override checkbox and changing the exposure and shadow settings. So, now let's set up some other light sources, besides the fill light, to make our interior lighting more professional and richer. I'm going to stop the interactive render. In the main viewport, I switch to the perspective view. Let's add more light sources here. Go to plus, light sources, corona, corona light. In the empty space, add a new light source. In the settings, change it to rectangle, rotate it so that it shines into our window opening, change its size, place this source not too close but not too far away. It is also necessary to uncheck occlude other lights. Next, I copy this light source in instance mode, and using the scale tool, press the R key. I change the height of this light source. I also change the width. And let's copy this light source one more time in instance mode and apply it to the third opening. And in this way, by changing one light source, we will change the parameters of the other light sources as well. If you want to make any of the light sources independent, you can select it and click on this Make Unique button. Okay, let's go into one of the cameras and let's run an interactive render. Let me turn the light sources on and off, and you'll see the changes we've gotten. The fill light in our interior has become even more active. Obviously, you can increase the intensity of these light sources. And let's add the sun to our interior. Let's select Corona Sun, place it here. In the Corona Sun settings, let's put it in the Color Direct Input tab and let's keep the intensity to a minimum. I'm going to add the sun to make the shadows from our objects more expressive. To make the shadows sharper, we need to shrink the sun down to about this size. You can see how we've got some crisp shadows. And to change and move the shadow pattern, I'm going to change the position of the sun. To render only from the viewport you need, open the render settings. In the View to Render tab, choose the viewport you need. In my case, it's Corona Camera 001 and press Lock. Now, no matter in which viewport you will perform the action, only that viewport will be rendered. and you can see how we've gotten a sharper shadows pattern. This is a pretty standard setup that you can use for most cases when creating commercial projects. Now let me show you the next method, which is an older method, but it doesn't make it any less effective. Now we're going to add an HDRI map to our render settings instead of Corona Sky. Let's remove Corona Sky from here, right-click, Clear, click on the empty slot and select Corona Bitmap. Click Cancel, go to Materials, copy this map into the empty materials slot in instance mode, and next I'm going to apply an HDRI map like this. I drag it into our bitmap slot. Also turn off all of our light sources. And now let's run the interactive render again. Using the rotation parameter, we can rotate our map. To increase the intensity of our map, I'll go down, and in the Output Amount tab, I'll increase the value. In the Tone Mapping tab, I can make the picture a little bit cooler. Okay? And so, quite simply, we've got the atmospheric light in our interior. Check out my YouTube lesson, 7 ways to improve your lighting. Now let me show you how to create roughly the same sunset light, but using the standard Corona tools. This method will allow you to create atmospheric light in a more flexible way without using an HDRI map. Let's run an interactive render. I've gone into the Corona renderer settings. Let's open up the materials and we'll reapply Corona Sky in instance mode. In Corona Sky, I'm going to bring back saturation to give our render a cooler hue. I'm also going to go into Corona Sky and reduce its intensity. In the Color Correction tab, I can change the hue shift setting to change the tone of my Corona Sky map. And now I'm going to add a new sun to our scene. Let's change the position of the sun and its targeting. I'll immediately change the sun's intensity to minimum, reduce its size, switch the Color tab to Kelvin to control its hue more conveniently, and I'll make the sun as warm as possible. And so, using standard methods, we've created a roughly similar atmospheric sunset light. Okay, now let's create a night light with the spotlight sources turned on. I'm going to turn off the sun. Next, I'm going to turn the brightness of Corona Sky to minimum. Next, I'm going to go to the Corona renderer settings in the Scene tab, and I find the Overrides column, and I'm interested in these 3 slots. Let's, in the Refractions slot, we'll check the box and change the color, and let's see what changes. And you can see how the background of our window has overwritten. Instead of Corona Sky, we now just see the color. Now this works in the Refractions tab, because we have the glass material here. Let's change this color to a darker, more neutral color. Let's copy this color and add it for the other 2 slots. Okay, now I'm going to add the top light source. I'm going to go to the top view and I'm going to place 3 light sources. I'm going to find them here. Plus, I'm going to click on Lights, Corona Light. I place it anywhere, go to Settings, change the shape of the light source to a disk. I reduce the size of the disk and place the disk inside the spot. I'll raise the disk to the desired height and place it more precisely. Let's see how it looks from a perspective view. Okay, I'm going to turn on the target of our light source. I'm going to select the target and change the orientation of our light source. I want to make sure that it's shining towards my island. Next, I'm going to select this light source and copy it twice. To make this easier to do, here I'm going to go into Lights mode, select the light source, and with the Shift key held down, move it to the left in Instance mode. This light source is also placed inside my spotlight. I copy it again. I go to the camera, select the light source. Let's make it warmer right away. Let's run an interactive render. Let's increase the intensity of these light sources. Let's make them even warmer. Okay, this is the result. Let's turn on the bloom and glare setting. Here you can adjust the size of this effect. Let's also add some LED lighting. I'm going to turn on the ceiling display. Go to the light source creation mode, Corona light. Create a Corona light. Change its mode to rectangle. And from the top view, place this light source as I need it. I start the interactive renderer, reduce the intensity of this light source. Okay, I got this result. I think it looks pretty good. I hope this lesson was useful for you. See you in the next video.